What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Grammar by Dan. I'm Dan, and for this episode, we're looking at the third part of the theory of English. We're nearly at the end. And in this part, what we are dealing with is with punctuation. So, firstly, what is punctuation? Why is it important? Punctuation are all the little marks and symbols that we can put in written speech. Why do we do it? We do it because what we want to try to replicate is spoken speech, right? So every time that we see written speech without commas, without full stops, we want to replicate the kind of tones that we get when we're speaking. That's why they're there. So most of it is just really just types of silence. And when you're doing things like quotation marks, it's making things a bit more clear as to what's actually going on in the sentence. So let's get right into it. Okay, so here we are, nearly at the end of our theory of English. So, from here to there is punctuation. That's what we're dealing with here. That's the topic of the day. If you remember, if you watch the other two sections, we ended here, where we were dealing with 4 different types of sentence, which are really just combinations of our independent and our dependent clauses, which we were dealing with, is it right over here? Okay, so basically once you get to this bit, you know how to communicate. Okay, you're making intelligible sentences that have meaning, that people will recognize in the English-speaking world. However, what is punctuation? What is it there to do? So when we're dealing with punctuation, we're talking about things like our commas. We're talking about things like full stops, things that we have all encountered. But the way that we can really make this clear as an idea is that punctuation is there for written speech to do what? If you can read this, replicate the flow of natural speech. It's there to replicate the flow of natural speech. When we read it, we want to have those silences there so that the person who is reading it gets the impression that the author is almost like talking to them through their written speech. So let's just go really quick through the 13 types of punctuation out there. Sorry about that. The full stop. The full stop is basically there to end a sentence, right? What we use a full stop for is once we have our simple compound complex or compound complex sentences, we chuck a full stop at the end to mark out this is where the sentence ends. That's what a full stop is. The comma. The comma is a very versatile punctuation mark. Basically what a comma is in function is it takes the role of almost like a short breath in speech, right? So take what I just said there, a small breath in speech. I didn't say a small breath in speech. I said a small breath in speech. So if I was to use a comma, I would put it between breath and in speech, because that's the kind of effect that I'm trying to replicate. And if you're looking for a comprehensive list on how we use commas and most of these punctuation techniques, I'll make a video for that. But there are just so many that we can list out here. We use commas in lists. We use commas after transitive phrases, such as like, therefore, what we should do is this. So after we say therefore, we want to put a comma there. We use commas when we are in the vocative case, which is just when we are addressing people. So what are you doing, comma, John? Okay, so you see there's just so many places where we can use a comma. If you look, and this is a quick look at all the different types that we have. So here we have the comma. We can use them to separate lists in adjectives or adverbs. So dark, cold, fast. Hopefully you get the idea behind comma, a short breath. A colon. What is a colon? We can actually see a colon right here. There are 2 dots, one on top of the other. how do we use a colon, or what is the most important function of a colon? Well, I would like to say that the most important function of a colon is as an equal sign almost, okay? It's saying that this second part of the sentence expands on the first. So you could say, I'm going to a very particular type of shop, colon, the shoe shops, or something like that. But basically we put the comma there, the colon, sorry, there, to say that this second part of the sentence expands upon the first. That's the basic function of a colon. The semicolon is one that most people are familiar with, but few know really how to use. A semicolon, as I would describe it, is a break. So it's a type of silence, just like a colon, just like a comma, and a full stop. It's just like a type of silence in your speech. But it's longer than a comma, but it's shorter than a full stop. Okay, so it's longer than a comma, shorter than a full stop. How do we use it? When do we use it? Mostly with joining two independent clauses. So this would be particularly helpful if we're making a compound sentence. Okay? Particularly useful in that respect. You can also use a semicolon when you're making lists where the items in the list require commas in themselves. So you have that kind of use as well. Now we move all the way up here with number 5, our dashes. What is a dash? A dash is basically those lines, you know, those lines that you put that you can put in sentences. You have to differentiate the dash, however, from the hyphen. That's a common mistake. Basically the way that you differentiate them is that the dash is a little bit longer than the hyphen, and it also has a different function, as I'll explain here. The dash is, for me, similar to a semicolon actually, and it's also a bit similar to a comma, because what we're doing with the dash is we are separating elements of the sentence, right, with a silence, okay? So I write here that the dash is stronger than a comma, but similar to the semicolon, it's also a bit weaker than a full stop. So we can use it to join dependent clauses, we can use it to join phrases, we can use it to join independent clauses, but just remember that your dash is a very versatile punctuation device, and it's usually used for the purposes of joining or expanding elements in a sentence. However, the hyphen, remember the hyphen has to be differentiated from the dash. The hyphen is also a short mark, a little line like that. However, the hyphen is in the business of connecting words together to make compound words. So it's there to join, okay? So we make compound words such as, okay, so here, Trans-Siberian Railway. Trans-Siberian Railway. Or you can say China-Russia Railway or something like that. But when we say China and Russia, okay, but what we really mean to say is that this railway flows between China and Russia. So if we just put China, Russia together without the hyphen, there would just be an empty space between them. It doesn't really make sense. We put the hyphen there to indicate that the Chinese-Russian railway is a term in itself. They're not separate. They combine to make one term. There's a lot of theory behind hyphens, when to use them and that kind of thing, but that's the function of them. Number 7, the apostrophe. Now everyone's familiar with an apostrophe, and to be honest, they are actually they're a bit more simple than people think they are. The apostrophe has 2 main functions. The first function is over here. They are used to indicate possession. And this is the function that most people are familiar with, right? So we say that it's John's bag. So after John, we put the comma there. Not the comma, sorry, the apostrophe after John, just on the little top. So you know what an apostrophe is? It's just that little dash that you put at the top of words. And you say it's John's bag. It's Mary's car, right? The other little thing that you might want to take note when you're doing your apostrophes for possession is that if your noun ends with an S already, such as groups, such as it's a girls group. So you're not saying it's the girls group, like one girl. You're talking about plural. And if you're talking about plural, you are allowed to put the apostrophe just at the end, just on the top of the end of that word. So you say girls with the S, and you can just chuck an apostrophe at the top there, okay? The second function that an apostrophe has is for contractions. Contractions are quite common, but most people don't know that they're called contractions. Contractions are multiple words where one word has been absorbed in the other by taking out some of the letters. So say don't, okay? D-O-N apostrophe T, don't. That's a contraction because what don't means is do not. Do not do that. Don't do that. So you say, so what we're doing is we're going do not, but instead of having the N-O there, we get rid of it to make a short form. We say do, so we say D-O-N apostrophe T, okay? What does the apostrophe represent? The O. That's what contraction is. We use it for words like can't or doesn't. You know, that's what a contraction is, and that's basically the second use of your apostrophes. Question marks. Fairly simple, right? We use them for questions. If you have a question, you put a question mark. Whose car is that? Where should we go tonight? Is he serious? Questions, we just put a question mark. Number 9, exclamation marks. For emotion. Hey, don't do that. Come back here. He stole my bike. I don't know. But that's what an exclamation mark is. If you are a non-native speaker of English, I caution you against using the exclamation mark. You have only it's my opinion that only good writers can use an exclamation mark properly. If you just chuck in an exclamation mark at the end of every sentence where you think there's emotion, what you actually end up doing is losing the emotion of the sentence through repetition. So I would, if you are a non-native English speaker, I would avoid exclamation marks almost entirely. Yeah. So I hope you get the picture that with punctuation, there's really only two main functions, right? So the first function is as a type of silence. Full stop is a type of silence. A comma is a type of silence. A colon is a type of silence. A semicolon is a type of silence. So those are our different types of silence. They help navigate our way through the sentences without it sounding, and think about it, if you didn't have these punctuation devices, it would just be like da 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 da. It would just go on and on and on and on. But you want to make it sound like somebody's talking to you. That's how these things make sense. So that's our type of silence. But over here, you got things like question marks, like exclamation marks, like your apostrophes. And up here, you'll have things like quotation marks, and ellipses. Ellipses is a type of silence. But these all help make, they all add something to the sentence. They all add a special little flavor, right? So your question marks help to maintain the sentence as a question by basically putting the question mark in there. The exclamation mark helps emphasize the inherent emotion in your sentence. And things like your apostrophes would help with navigating things like your contractions, right? Imagine if you said don't without the apostrophe, it would be don't. So that's the second type, the second function of your punctuation devices. They help with clarity in written speech. 10. Quotation marks. So if our apostrophe was just one small dash, our quotation marks are 2. And we use them when you want to say something in another's words. So we use them for quoting people. A politician said something. You want to quote him. You want to say that he said this. We use quotation marks. Okay. We can also use them with dialogue. If you're writing a narrative, you want to say that this character said something, we can put in some quotation marks. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. 11 is ellipses. Ellipses is another punctuation mark that everybody recognizes, but they just don't know the name of. It's like a song that you recognize on the radio, and then you find out, oh, you know, that's the person that sung it. What ellipses are is they're those 3 dots. You recognize them? It's like, I can't believe he did that. ... It's to symbolize, and here, the train of thought slows down, okay? So when you put those 3 dots, it's to indicate that a person is losing their train of thought, or their thought is slowing down, you know? That's how we use ellipses. Over here, we have 11, 12, and 13, and what these are, I don't know why this goes up to 11. Oh, that's 11 and 11. Whoops, my mistake. This should be 12, 13, and 14. These are, this one, your brackets, okay? 3 types of brackets. Now, we'll start with the easiest one. Everyone knows what round brackets are, correct? They're just round brackets, right? But they're different from square brackets. So I want to talk about these 2 primarily. So what are your round brackets? Your round brackets are there to add information into the sentence, add extra information into the sentence. So with the appositive case, we can say that John, round brackets, the mayor of the city, talked to them. So you see when I put those round brackets there, it's adding information to the sentence. So we can say something like, the zoo, round brackets, which had closed down, went bankrupt, or something like that, had gone bankrupt. So that's the purpose of round brackets. But what about square brackets? You know what square brackets are? They're those, yeah, they literally look like a square if you put them together. Yeah, they look like that, like this. What do we use square brackets for? We use square brackets when we're including information that is not what the author said. So we mostly use this with quotations when we're quoting people, quotation marks. And so for example, you want to quote somebody and you want to say, and let's say this person said, I went to the place, okay? If you're reading it in the context of, like, let's say this is a memoir or something. If you're reading this in the context of that, you would know what the place is, right? But if you're just quoting it, nobody knows what the place is. You need the context there. So you could use square brackets to say, I went to, and instead of the place, you put square brackets and you say Venezuela. I went to Paris, closing square brackets. So that's really the function of your square brackets. And down here, you have braces. You know what braces are? They're those weird brackets where it's like a bow. You know, it's like, what? Like that. Like a upside down 3. Braces, ignore them. They're mostly used in linguistics and mathematics, not so much in English. But they are a type of recognized mark. Okay? And that is where we are now, at this line here, covering punctuation and now knowing how to write correctly, to make your writing intelligible as well as your speaking. All right. Hey guys, well, that's the end of this 3rd section of the theory of English. And once again, if you did watch the whole way through, I am super proud of you. One of the things that I wanted to start doing is really starting to condense my videos down and make them a lot shorter, which I would love to do when we're looking in more detail as to like what full stops are, how to use them, what commas are, how to use them. But remember, the theory of English is there to just give you a complete picture, so that you know that this is how many punctuation devices there are, that you know that this is how many types of sentences there are, and then we'll be able to make some more videos and really go into the meat of it. But if you like this video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the last part of the theory of English. Alright, take care.
Only hidden